These Trump Epstein emails are really, really bad. And I have some that are not getting talked about nearly enough. I'm going to show you, but overall, just a really bad day for Trump. I have the flu right now. I wasn't planning on posting for the next couple of days because I'm so sick, but these deserve some coverage. So in an email in 2011, Jeffrey Epstein said, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, who is a redacted name, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Trump is the dog that hasn't barked and spent hours with a victim at Epstein's house. And then it gets even worse. He emailed journalist Michael Wolff. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Elaine to stop, which confirms that Donald Trump knew about what Epstein was doing. Here's another one in 2015. "Have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door." Epstein also said in emails that he'd been advising the Russian government on how to deal with Donald Trump, possibly giving them blackmail over him. Maybe this explains why Trump rolls over every single time for Putin. Here's another one where Epstein offered somebody photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen. In 2016, after Donald Trump won the election, Linda Stone asked Epstein, "You still in Paris?" And he said, "No, Trump Tower," which completely debunks the narrative from Trump that he cut Epstein off. Then in December of 2016, someone emailed him saying, "I hope you're in a better place now than NY." Epstein said, "Sorry, yes, Palm Beach, all Trump people here." I mean, this is as incriminating as it gets. Epstein is directly saying that Donald Trump is gross and creepy and that he knew about the girls and that he's the dog that hasn't barked. It is a smoking gun. Given these revelations, it's more important than ever that these files are released to the public.
House Democrats have released 3 emails handed over by the Epstein estate that seem to indicate that President Trump knew that Epstein had young girls around him well before Epstein was convicted for child sex offenses. Now, the first email, for example, it's from 2011. It's between Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein says, quote, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump." A victim, whose name has been redacted, spent hours at my house with him, and he has never once been mentioned. There's another email from 2019 in which Epstein tells the author Michael Wolff, quote, "Of course Trump knew about the girls," as he asked Ghislaine to stop. It's not clear from that email exactly what Trump wanted Maxwell to stop doing. Epstein died by suicide in prison about 7 months after sending that email, and President Trump has said that he ended his friendship with Epstein long ago because Epstein kept hiring away young female employees from Mar-a-Lago. Now, it's no coincidence that House Democrats are releasing these emails today because Adelita Grijalva of Arizona is finally slated to be sworn in today, weeks after she won her special election. And that gives Democrats and some Republicans the final 218th signature that they need on a petition to force a vote to require the Justice Department to release the full Epstein files. And that could include thousands of pages related to Epstein, to Maxwell, and potentially some of their high-powered friends and clients.
Guys, I just read the Epstein emails, and tell me why Epstein compares Trump to a loyal dog and says, quote, "I know how dirty Donald is." At this point, I don't know what more information needs to come out for MAGA to admit that Trump is guilty in all of this. Like, they have more pictures together than my grandparents and I. Literally, what the fuck?
Breaking news rocking Washington, D.C. Never before seen emails released this morning by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, raising new questions about President Trump's relationship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The emails provided to Congress by the Epstein estate show private correspondence between Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell and between Epstein and author Michael Wolff, with multiple references to Trump, all raising more questions about what Trump knew and when. Epstein writing in a 2011 email to Maxwell that Trump, quote, "spent hours at his house with a sex trafficker."
Well, this is hilarious. Donald Trump's worst nightmare has just come to life. Well, the newly unsealed Jeffrey Epstein files are exposing shocking connections, secret meetings, and long buried truths. Well, as names and hidden details surface, the internet is in chaos and powerful figures are scrambling to respond. So, well, you might as well want to grab a coffee, lay back, because this revelation is going to shake the political world to its core. Let's get into it.
Good morning, Anna. Well, the one you just read is perhaps the most important one because it was written by Jeffrey Epstein in 2011, long before Donald Trump's political career, and he used the phrase, the dog that hasn't barked. That's a phrase from a Sherlock Holmes story suggesting a clue. And he says that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted name of a victim, spent hours at my house with him. He's never once been mentioned. And then he uses the phrase police chief, etc. So these emails, essentially what they do is they raise new questions about Donald Trump's longstanding contention that he had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's massive sex trafficking operation.
The Democrat Oversight Committee released this today. Breaking, Oversight Dems have received new emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate that raise serious questions about Donald Trump and his knowledge of Epstein's horrific crimes. Read them for yourself. It's time to end this cover-up and release the files. This first email is supposedly from Ghislaine Maxwell. I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. ... And then the victim's name is blurred out. So the victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Here's that if you want it. Pause to read. The next reported email is from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff. And it says the victim's name, which is blacked out, and it says Mar-a-Lago. Then more redacted information, and then it starts with, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls. He asked Ghislaine to stop. And this is from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff, supposedly. Again, pause to read if you want. The next supposed email is from Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein, and he says, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. And you can pause to read that here. Again, so all this information is just breaking. It's just coming out this morning. I'll work to keep you guys up to date. That's all I got for now. I'm also thinking about releasing a more in-depth version of this whole situation on my newsletter. This is also a great place to get direct information from me every morning. I drop morning newsletter updates about what's been happening. So the link to my newsletter is on my profile. Go to my profile, click the link. You'll see the screen right here. Drop your email in, hit subscribe, and you'll be good to go. Anyway, that's all I got for now. We'll see you in the next one.
Epstein called Trump evil beyond belief. So all of the emails are available, not just the three that the Democrats shared today, but everything is now available. You can go and see all of it. And I just started randomly looking through, and so he sent this email to this financial journalist, and it says, he feels alone and is nuts, 3 exclamation points. I told everyone from day one, evil beyond belief, mad, and most thought I was speaking metaphorically. It's obvious he could crack. Stormy Daniels, ? Lies after lies after lies. This stuff is crazy. And the financial journalist said that he is scaring the shit out of me. He could well tank the global economy. And asks if an acquaintance, Barack, not Barack Obama, but a different one, can talk some sense into him. This stuff is wild. The fact that he shared this in a private correspondence without any expectation that it would become public, like, he clearly believed what he's saying in this email. This is what he thought of Trump at this time in 2018. This is just one email I found. I want to post another one that I found. If you want to see it, stick around because I don't want to make this video too long. But there's some crazy shit in here.
Absolutely bombshell news right now. Newly released emails minutes ago show that Donald Trump spent likely hours with a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's at Epstein's house. In a new email released by the House Oversight Committee, it shows Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell talking about how Donald Trump was, quote, the dog that hasn't barked. Further talking about how an alleged victim spent hours at my house with him, referring to it was Jeffrey Epstein's house. The full email from Ghislaine Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein was on April 2nd, 2011. It said, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, I'm 75% there. Then another email released from January 31st, 2019 from Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein shows victim Mar-a-Lago, identifier Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This is proof that Donald Trump knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Folks, this is an absolute bombshell. I will have more updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free, follow for more.
Baby, if Donald Trump's name is in the emails, then he's obviously on the list. Let's be clear. And if his name was on the list, they would have been released a long darn time ago. Y'all not gonna like me for this. Y'all gonna hate me. And y'all can go ahead and start calling me every name in the book in the comments as of right now. But I am not believing it. Every single time that man gets one up or get a victory over the Democrats, we hear this same old song, which is the Epstein's files. At what point are y'all gonna release them? At what point are y'all gonna start giving these victims justice and start holding people accountable? That's where I'm at with it. Now, before I go any further, let me be very clear and say this. If Donald Trump is at all guilty for anything that these people have been saying for the longest time that he have done, then he needs to burn in hell 100 times over. Let me be clear and say that, because I'm not taking up for him. But I'm tired of hearing the same old Epstein song over and over again when there's real shit that's going on in America right now. At the end of the day, like I said before, if y'all not going to release them files, then let this shit go. Let this shit go, because right now y'all really just playing on our emotions, and there's a lot of energy harvesting that's going on, and I'm over it.
Do you guys remember this video?
The victims themselves have stated that this is a lot bigger than I think anyone anticipated. It is very much so a possibility that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset working for our adversaries.
Well, new Epstein files have been released, and there is one email that Jeffrey Epstein sent to the former Prime Minister of Norway, Thorbjorn Jagland. I hope I said that right. Now, I'll show you this email in a minute, but basically, the email shows, in Epstein's own words, that he was working with high-ranking Russian officials and feeding them information about Donald Trump during Trump's first term in 2018. And this email that I'm about to read was written 1 month before Trump and Putin met in the 2018 summit. Here's the email. Epstein, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me. Vitaly Churkin used to, but he died. Meaning Epstein has a history of providing insight and information on Trump to high-ranking Russian officials. So Jagland responds, I'll meet Lavrov's assistant on Monday and will suggest. Meaning, obviously, I'll pass along your message. And finally, Epstein responds with, Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversation. It's not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. Epstein is the most notorious sex trafficker in the world, and he is a man that weaponized secret recordings to blackmail the rich and powerful. So what exactly was he offering Russia about Donald Trump? That's the question. Come to DC on November 22nd for the Remove the Regime rally. I'm going to be there, and I want to know what you think in person.
It's not just these 3 emails from Jeffrey Epstein that mention President Donald Trump. There is actually a ton of emails that mention Donald Trump, and I read them this morning. Now, you probably already know that the House Democrats on the Oversight Committee released these 3 specific emails from the convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein that all mentioned the president this morning. But what you may not know is the full House Oversight Committee, including Republicans, released 20,000 additional documents from the Epstein estate this morning, too. And I just went through hundreds of those documents, and they all, in some way or another, mention Trump. Some talk about Trump before he was president, but most of these emails from Jeffrey Epstein were dated 2017, 2018, during Trump's first term, and discussed Trump's strategies, his comments publicly and in private, and at least one talks about potential leverage that Epstein could have on Trump. Now, before I get into all of this, because there's a lot, the White House responded to this huge document dump today.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us.
We'll get to what the White House press secretary said in a second, but first, the facts. Fact: victim names are always redacted in these files. Fact: the documents I'm reporting on in this video were released by both Democrats and Republicans. Fact: all of the emails I'm reporting on are part of a trove of documents that the full House Oversight Committee received from the Epstein estate. These documents did not come from the Justice Department's massive Epstein file because they still haven't released that file, as you know. These emails are just the tip of the iceberg. There will very well be more emails or documents that mention Trump that come out that were sent over to the House committee by the Epstein estate as the committee members sort through them. Okay, so now to these actual emails. You already heard about the 3 specific ones from Jeffrey Epstein.
Donald Trump is totally panicking about these Jeffrey Epstein emails that have just been released. He just posted this on his own social media platform, Truth Social. He says, in other words, the Democrats are using the Jeffrey Epstein hoax to try and deflect from their massive failures, in particular, their most recent one, the shutdown. Now, many of you know his own social media platform, Truth Social, has a new AI feature that is fact-checking him. So I asked his own AI if what he just said is true, and look at what it says. The short answer is no. There is no evidence that the Jeffrey Epstein hoax is a made-up Democratic plot or that the Democrats are using a hoax to distract from a shutdown. Democrats have been leveraging real documents and emails tied to Epstein to pressure the White House and criticize Trump's reversal on releasing the Epstein files.
The Democrats have put out emails from Epstein referring to Trump as the dog that haven't barked. If this is the beginning of the Democrats starting to play dirty, then bring it on. I mean, if y'all got this type of information, what you been holding it for? You should put that out during the shutdown. If you got some more information, put it out now. What you waiting for? World hunger? We losing out here. Pull out the bad stuff. Don't be like Nick Cannon. Pull it out. Pull out all the bad information that you got. Play dirty. Bring a knife to the fight. Use your taser. I don't condone violence, but pull somebody hair. Give somebody a wedgie. I don't care what you do. We know he on them Epstein files. If you got him, pull it out. That's my new campaign. Pull it out. Democrats, what we gonna do? Pull it out. Sitting up holding information like that, and the government been shut down for 40-some days, and then y'all want to finally pull it out? Talking about the dog that ain't barked. Y'all should have been You should have been bark. Y'all got all that information and y'all ain't bark. We didn't sit up here and endure watching Trump go to sleep during press conferences, sitting up in the White House, falling asleep, can't keep his eyes open, doing all this, trying to keep his eyes open. Y'all sitting up on Epstein emails. I ought to smack my damn self. You make me vomit.
Now, though, pause that conversation to get back to this breaking news we just teased. Just moments ago, the House Oversight Committee released never-before-seen emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, which include correspondence between Epstein and his longtime co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, currently incarcerated on sex trafficking charges. Let's now bring in MSNBC Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delanian, who has been digging through these emails. Ken, what have we learned so far?
Good morning, Jonathan. Well, look, the Epstein estate has released some 23,000 emails, and House Democrats have been poring over them, and they found some correspondence directly mentioning Donald Trump by name. They've released 3 of these emails, and they're quite interesting. The first one was between Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein back in 2011, where Epstein wrote that Donald Trump spent hours at my house with an unnamed victim of sex trafficking, whose name is redacted in the email. And Epstein referred to Trump as the dog that hasn't barked. And then in a separate email years later with author Michael Wolff in 2019, Epstein said explicitly that Donald Trump, quote, knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. And then the Democrats cite another email with Wolf in 2015 where Epstein and Wolf are discussing if they can craft an answer for an upcoming Donald Trump interview. And Wolf sort of suggests that Epstein has leverage over Donald Trump, saying if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. Now, look, Jeffrey Epstein, it was a manipulative monster, and so you really can't take anything he says to the bank here. But this is important evidence that people trying to understand what Donald Trump's relationship was with Jeffrey Epstein and what his role was and where he was and did he go to the House. This is important evidence that fills in some blanks on that picture. The Democrats believe there are more to come from these emails that have been released by the Epstein estate, John.
And we should note our friend Joyce Vance notes on Twitter just now, she's also pouring through these emails, that one of them dates from 2011 when Epstein would have had really little incentive to lie. And it's well before Trump's political career, of course. So this is, Ken, the story that Donald Trump just wants to go away. And he's done a pretty good job, I guess, of telling MAGA influencers, hey, stop talking about this. He kind of quelled that rebellion that we saw over the summer. There's a real belief that Speaker Johnson sent the House home when he did, in part to not talk about Epstein and not swear in that Arizona Congresswoman-elect who is going to provide the decisive vote. So a couple of things here. I know you're still going through the emails, but this is, and we expect Johnson to do that swearing in later today. There's going to be more to come, right? And we should note Trump has long since challenged the credibility of Michael Wolff on other matters, but we'll see. He's getting these emails from Epstein, too. What else should we expect, not just potentially from these emails, but from what new material may still be coming?
Well, look, I mean, there's got to be more information that sheds light on Donald Trump's longtime relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Whether it's incriminating to Donald Trump remains to be seen, but it's got to be there in those emails and elsewhere in the files. And in fact, we know that Trump was told that his name was in the quote unquote Epstein files, the unreleased information from the Justice Department. Again, we've always been told that there's nothing in that material that incriminates others to the point where they should have been charged. That's what investigators have always said, long before this became an issue of controversy. But you're absolutely right. As a political matter, it's just so interesting because the MAGA world has long believed that there's a conspiracy to cover up what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, now the people who have control of the material is the Trump administration. And so, but yet the MAGA folks have not turned their fire on Donald Trump personally. They've been very mad at Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, the FBI director, for what they consider, inaction and not releasing these files. And so far, the Justice Department's position is we're not releasing anything more. But this, as you said, this is a live political issue. The interesting question is going to be, do these emails or does other information cause anyone in the MAGA movement to start turning their attention to Donald Trump and asking him what he's hiding and whether more information should be released, Jonathan?
MSNBC Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delaney. And Ken, thank you as always. John Heilman.
Jeffrey Epstein confirmed in emails what we all suspected and knew to be true, that Donald Trump knew exactly what he was up to. Among thousands of emails released by a House Oversight Committee, Jeffrey Epstein referred to Donald Trump as the dog that never barked, and that Donald Trump had spent hours with one of the victims at Epstein's house. Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period, Jeffrey Epstein said to himself in an email in 2019. He just never got a massage, which of course confirms that Donald Trump lied about not having knowledge of Epstein sex trafficking underage women. Now, the release of the remaining Epstein files is still yet to come. But now that the Democratic representative Adelita has been sworn into the House, we may see an effort advance on releasing the remaining Epstein files.
Okay, we got to talk about these new Epstein emails about Donald Trump that just leaked from a roughly 15-year period. These documents were released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. I could describe them to you, but I think I'd rather just show you the emails and read them to you. The headlines just don't do this justice. Here's email number 1. This is direct correspondence between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is from April of 2011. And Epstein says to Ghislaine, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, it's redacted, a victim spent hours at my house with him, being Donald Trump. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. And Ghislaine Maxwell says, I've been thinking about that. So Trump at Epstein's house with one of Epstein's victims. And I want to remind you that this also sets Ghislaine Maxwell up for a perjury charge because Ghislaine Maxwell lied to Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's personal attorney turned deputy AG, when they met and said that she never saw Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein at his house. So here's email number 2. This is direct correspondence between Epstein and author Michael Wolff, who we've had on the Midas Touch podcast multiple times. Epstein says, victim, Mar-a-Lago, redacted. These are all redacted names. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This is from January 2019 when Trump was making up this whole idea that he had kicked Epstein out of his club. And so here's email number 3. This is from 2015. This is a direct correspondence between Epstein and Michael Wolff, where Michael Wolff says, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he has not been on the plane or to the house, as in Epstein's plane or house, then that gives you a valuable PR, like public relations, and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Remember, this is right before the 2016 election. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey's a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of a political correctness which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. And then Epstein says, if we were able to craft an answer for him, as in Trump, what do you think it should be? And Michael Wolff says, I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Wow, well, if Trump thought he was going to be able to get away from this Epstein story, well, think again. This is a major story, and it's only going to get bigger. We learned on the Midas Touch podcast that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie are inviting the victims to the Capitol next week for another press conference. Adelita Grijalva is going to get sworn in. She's expected to be the 218th vote on the Epstein discharge petition. This is just the beginning, folks. Stay tuned and listen to the Midas Touch podcast for more.
Not enough people are talking about this, but in one of the Epstein emails, he says he advised Russian officials on how to deal with Donald Trump. Epstein says Churkin was great. He understood Trump and our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. He's referring to Vitaly Churkin, a Russian diplomat who was the former permanent representative of Russia to the United States. The person he's emailing replies saying, I'll meet Lavrov's assistant on Monday and I will suggest thank you for a lovely evening. They're referring to this guy who's also a Russian diplomat, specifically the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the Russian Federation. Epstein replies saying, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me, saying that Churkin used to before he passed away. Obviously here he's referring to Trump. A lot of people have said Trump has been very hesitant to call out Putin for committing war crimes. Could this be the reason? It's crazy because these emails aren't speculation or political commentary. They are Epstein's own words. And he's describing himself as someone who's advising Russia on how to handle the president of the United States. Epstein wasn't just name dropping here. He was referencing interactions with Russian diplomats. And whatever he told them to do to Trump is clearly working because he has been extremely weak on handling Putin.
Jeffrey Epstein mentioned Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence over the last 15 years or so. These are newly released emails obtained by CNN that show Jeffrey Epstein bringing Donald Trump up in conversations with Ghislaine Maxwell and the author Michael Wolff. We got them after members of Congress got their hands on them after they subpoenaed Jeffrey Epstein's estate, which in turn handed over thousands of documents to Congress. Now, in these emails, there's one that is a few years after Jeffrey Epstein got that sweetheart deal down in Florida, where Trump is referenced specifically by the late sex trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein writes in this email to Ghislaine Maxwell in April 2011 and says, I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Maxwell responded and said, I have been thinking about that. Now, the name of this person was redacted by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee because they say she is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. But shortly after these emails were released, Republicans on that committee identified her as Virginia Giuffre. She's one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent survivors who died by suicide earlier this year. The Republicans are noting that in her book that she wrote, she talks about how she met Donald Trump, but does not accuse him of any wrongdoing. Now, of course, Trump himself is not actually a party to these emails. He is simply only talked about in these emails, and he has denied any wrongdoing and hasn't been accused of any. In another email that was released by the committee, the author Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein are talking when Donald Trump is in office. This is in 2019. And Jeffrey Epstein seems to reference when Trump was saying that he had kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. Epstein writes, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop." Now, that doesn't have any context in this release, but it seems to be a reference to what we actually heard from Trump earlier this year, when he said that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. The White House says for being a creep, and Trump says because Ghislaine Maxwell was poaching women from his Mar-a-Lago spa. Now, all of this comes as in Washington here, a new House Democrat is set to be sworn in on Wednesday, which would make her the 218th vote on that discharge petition to release the files the Justice Department has in relation to Jeffrey Epstein.
So Democrats failed, shut down, did not work, so now we're on to some Epstein shit. Some old Epstein shit. So instead of celebrating the government reopening, we're now on to this tomfoolery. So Democrats intentionally redacted the victims' names in this intentional email leak today. The victim's name is Virginia Giuffre. She was a victim of sex trafficking. She also cleared President Trump of any wrongdoing in a sworn deposition. Unfortunately, Virginia died by suicide in April of this year. Democrats don't care about victims. They care about smearing President Trump at any turn. Democrats and their media allies have no merit, no honor. Because nobody bitched and moaned when President Bush first brought Epstein to light and then President Obama suppressed it. Then it was President Trump who brought it back to the forefront and then Democrats denied it. Remember that? And then President Otto Penn suppressed it again. The Democrat Party needs to grow the fuck up. Get y'all asses to work for the American people because this ain't it. You monkeys just deprived Americans of their paychecks and needy Americans of their SNAP benefits while still collecting your paycheck. And if you're a Democrat and you support this shit, you're retarded.
Lovely women that I met that are victims of Jeffrey Epstein, they also say they are victims of another group of men, one that they're afraid to list publicly, and I told them that I'd be happy to read that name on the House floor for them. There hasn't been any movement forward on that. Of course, that's up to those women and that's their decision. However, I remain steadfast in my belief is that all of this information should be released. No one should be protected. That's completely unfair. And I think it's a failure of administration that they never released it. No one has released this stuff. And so this is something that the American people are extremely angry about.
Donald Trump thought sending Congress away on an 8-week paid vacation would mean that his Epstein scandal would go away too, that we would stop asking questions, that no more emails would leak, no more documents would be revealed, no more photos would come out. But the opposite has happened because we haven't stopped talking about Epstein, and there is a good reason today why we shouldn't. With new leaked emails from Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein revealing Donald Trump's connection to underage victims and so much more. It is disgusting, and we are going to get into it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into these emails, I want to start with the context of spoken to victims. Understand is going to come out, and we are going to see some of what has come out about Trump's relationship and involvement with those victims of Epstein and Maxwell's crimes. But it is clear that this continues to go so much deeper, and there will be more information released. What we are about to see was information from the House Oversight Committee. This is not the full Epstein file. These are emails they were able to obtain. There are still so many documents. I don't even know how many that will come out after an up or down vote on the House, which is going to be put in motion today at 4 p.m. when Adelita Grijalva is sworn in. So Donald Trump is in a state of panic mode, but when he was last asked about Epstein, when he was last asked about Prince, Donald Trump hasn't once said that he cares about the pain that these victims, that these survivors feel.
Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. It was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Guffrey maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us.
I'm here at the scene of the cover-up to share the most important takeaway from the latest Epstein revelations. It isn't what's in the emails, it's who sat on the emails. The reason congressional Democrats had to be the ones to release these files is because congressional Republicans didn't want to show them to you. During the shutdown, House Speaker Mike Johnson refused to seat a newly elected Arizona Congresswoman because one more Democrat would make this very thing possible at a time when President Trump was very vulnerable politically. And now the shutdown itself almost seems like a stalling tactic. Thing is, everybody should have known who this man was, including this guy and whatever the heck he was doing for the last 4 years. And it includes everyone who endorsed him. This is not a party, a president, or even a place that values truth or justice. It's a protection racket for a crime boss. Don't ever forget that.
Walk us through the release by House Democrats and how they got a hold of these pages, these emails.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because probably a lot of your listeners are confused as to where all this information is coming from, the way it's coming from. And this tracks back to the House Oversight Committee. They have engaged in their own separate investigation into the Epstein saga. And what they did that was so novel that no one else apparently has done in pursuit of information as it relates to the Epstein affair is that they subpoenaed the Epstein estate. And so and what was remarkable about this was that the Epstein family, the Epstein estate, it's not the family, I guess it's the kind of the purveyors of what's left of his estate, were absolutely willing to comply. They gave the attorneys and investigators of the House Oversight Committee remarkable access to all of this material related to Jeffrey Epstein and his background. That includes his bank records, travel logs, and his emails. And what was revealed today in this release that House Democrats put out were 3 emails that were directly from Jeffrey Epstein. One was to Ghislaine Maxwell. The other 2 were to the author and journalist Michael Wolff, where he names Donald Trump. And he says that Donald Trump was aware of the girls, as you pointed out. He describes Donald Trump as the dog that could bark. And what House Democrats say is that this is a compelling enough reason for the Department of Justice to go fulsome in their release of all the information related to Jeffrey Epstein. And it then also is what they're using as kind of a vehicle to encourage other members of the House to eventually vote for this bill that would compel the Department of Justice to release all the information. And so that's where the discharge petition comes in, right? So that's a whole separate investigative thread that they're pulling on. And basically now at 4 o'clock today, Mike Johnson's going to swear in Adelita Grijalva, who is the congresswoman from Arizona who was elected back in September. She'll become the last vote on the discharge petition. And for your listeners that are like, what the heck's a discharge petition? Basically, this is a vehicle in which rank and file members can get past leadership to get something on the floor. They've got enough Republicans and all the Democrats involved in this to sign this petition, which means this will come to the floor eventually. And as much as President Trump wants to call this a hoax and say that this is a waste of time, it is an issue that is not going away.
Epstein emails dropped today, but MAGA is doing the best game of Anne Frank I've ever seen, because I can't find MAGA supporters anywhere right now. And while Democrats and Republicans have brought this forward from the House Oversight Committee, yet we've heard nothing from MAGA trying to claim that it's fake news, that it's not real, that it's a hoax, nothing. The MAGA silence is deafening right now because your fearless leader is going to get crucified among the people of this country. While Ghislaine Maxwell gets a puppy and a pardon for Christmas, the tangerine taco waffle caught with his fingers in a 14-year-old pie is now going to be getting fitted for an orange jumpsuit. Meanwhile, MAGA has nothing to say. You guys would have been out in droves if this was real, but now that you're silent is because you know basically that he did what he did and you are condoning it, and not only condoning it, but complicit in trying to cover it up. So exactly, what are you going to say now, MAGA? What do you got to...
So the Democrats not fucking around, huh? They really dropped that information on your boy. Shall I say we surprised? I know I'm not surprised. Are y'all? Come on, man. That's just the tip of the iceberg, y'all. It's way deeper than this. That man Epstein wrote, "The dog has embarked." And he was talking about Trump. So basically, is he trying to say he knew about the girls and just didn't say anything? This where it get wild to me, because these emails been sitting there since 2019. Didn't the FBI and shit go over all these files? Y'all mean to tell me y'all didn't see these files? Y'all didn't see nothing like this? Either they sloppy or they're compromised. It's just so much to unpack. Y'all remember they try to say that Trump was an informant. So if he was an informant in that situation, he would have told, right? Y'all, shit about to get dark. I'm telling y'all, stay tuned.
Breaking news, live this morning. Democrats have now released more parts of the Epstein files. It is stated in there that Epstein himself had called Trump the dog that didn't bark. It is stated that Trump had spent hours with the victims, girls, there at Mar-a-Lago. It also stated in that Epstein file release that Trump knew about the girls at Mar-a-Lago. More things are now finally coming out as they're being able to be released, and Democrats are now pushing forward to release these files. I would like to know what's going on even deeper in these files, as I hope they release everything. As we all know, the world is anticipated for all this, has been waiting. Let me know what y'all think, as these just been released this morning, live in all major news stations. Keep me updated on what y'all think about this. Hit me in the comments. Keep hitting that follow button. Must appreciate it, y'all.
President Trump has been growing increasingly frustrated by the Epstein case because it will not go away, and now it is back in the headlines with the White House labelling this as a politically motivated smear campaign. And they're talking about emails that have been released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, and we'll show you some of those emails. Now, one is from Jeffrey Epstein, who sent this email to his former girlfriend and associate Ghislaine Maxwell. It was sent in April 2011, and I'll read it for you. Jeffrey Epstein sent to Ghislaine Maxwell, "I want you to realise that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, the name redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Now, Republicans have now said publicly that the victim whose name is not mentioned there is actually Virginia Giuffre, who recently took her own life. Now, it is important to say that Virginia Giuffre has extensively spoken about her experiences with Jeffrey Epstein and has never accused President Donald Trump of any wrongdoing. In another email that Epstein sent to an author in 2019, he said that Donald Trump, quote, "knew about the girls." It is unclear what the phrase "knew about the girls" meant. Now, the White House has been quick to respond to this, saying that the Democrats selectively leaked emails to the liberal media to create a fake narrative to smear President Trump. These stories are nothing more than bad faith efforts to distract from President Trump's historic accomplishments. Now, Republicans were quick to say that these emails were leaked without any context. And then Republicans on that same oversight committee released more than 20,000 documents that are still being sorted through now. Democrats believe, though, that this means we still need more answers about the Jeffrey Epstein files.
The dog that hasn't barked is Donald Trump. That's what Jeffrey Epstein said in emails to Ghislaine Maxwell that were just released.
but these are emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. This is one from April 2nd, 2011. And in this email, Jeffrey Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell and says, quote, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. There's a name that's redacted, which the House Oversight Committee has said is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. Obviously, we have not been able to independently confirm that because her name is redacted from this email. But they say redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Ghislaine Maxwell responds to that email, John, and says, quote, I have been thinking about that. Now, there's no context for that message.
So 2 people who have been found guilty, all right, of doing unimaginable harm to children confirm that Donald Trump is a dog that has not barked. This is it. There's no more excuses, MAGA. There's no more excuses. What more evidence do you need that Donald Trump, he's not just in the Epstein files, he's in the Epstein files.
Between the two of them, and in another email, this seems to be a reference to Donald Trump saying that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. And Jeffrey Epstein writes to Michael Wolff and says, quote, Trump said he asked me to resign. And he adds, John, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Now, again, we don't have the context of this email, but John, that comes as in recent months, we've heard President Trump himself and the White House say that Jeffrey Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep. Wow. And Trump himself told reporters on Air Force One that he was trying to poach women, he and Ghislaine Maxwell, from the Mar-a-Lago spa. And that was why they had such a falling out and why he ultimately asked Jeffrey Epstein to leave the Mar-a-Lago club. Now, there's also a third email in here, John, and this is, again, in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. And Michael Wolff emails Jeffrey Epstein, and this is back in December 15th, 2015, so the height of the 2016 campaign, just to put that in perspective for you. And it was the day of a CNN Republican primary debate. And Michael Wolff says, quote, I hear that CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards. And Epstein wrote, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Michael Wolff responded at length, John, I'll summarize it, but he said in regards to Trump, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Now, I'll note, John, we looked at the transcript of that CNN debate from December 2015. There's no mention of Jeffrey Epstein in there.
Now, what's interesting about all of this has to be the timing of this right here. This means the House Oversight Committee, they've been sitting on this information for a while. And they're now choosing to do this as Congress or the House is set to get, started again after stalling for 7 weeks. This is what Mike Johnson has been trying his hardest to stop this type of information. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And Donald Trump knows it. Now it's all starting to make sense. Donald Trump. Wow. I really don't know what to make. Actually, I know what to make of it. The dog that hasn't barked. That's Epstein validating that Donald Trump is a dog for sure. Just like him. A disgusting, filthy dog. And then you got to ask yourself, why hasn't that dog barked? And what was the victim in, reference? What was the victim doing with Donald Trump all by themselves? Make it make sense. But yeah, it was clear Epstein was able to blackmail Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was paranoid about that. That's why things played out the way they played out in Donald Trump's first term with Epstein. And now we're on the verge of watching him about to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, who that email was sent to. It's like Governor Gavin Newsom has been saying, especially you Trump supporters, wake up. The jig is up. We all know what's going on now. You can't hide it.
We have the breakingest of fucking news right now. New Epstein emails appear to reveal more Trump ties. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released 3 new emails from the estate of the convicted ex-offender Jeffrey Epstein that mentioned President Trump, raising new questions about the extent of their relationship.
In one 2015 email between Epstein and the author Michael Wolff, the pair discussed a potential question from Trump's upcoming CNN interview about Trump and Epstein's personal ties. I think you should let him hang himself, Wolff wrote. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You could hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. The correspondence shared Wednesday in a part of 2,300 additional documents the committee is reviewing from the Epstein estate. Oversight ranking member Representative Robert Garcia said in the statement, "The more Donald Trump tries to cover up the Epstein files, the more we uncover," Garcia wrote. These latest emails and correspondence raise glaring questions about what else the White House is hiding and the nature of the relationship between Trump and Epstein. In these same emails, I want you to realize that the dog hasn't barked. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Blank, the victim, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. I'll keep you updated with more.
Donald Trump's been having a pretty good time. The shutdown ended, he didn't have to concede anything, and he didn't even have to give poor people health care. His favorite kind of deal. Everything's coming up Trump. Nothing can stop the Trump train now.
Breaking news, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein mentioned Donald Trump by name several times in private emails.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Trump train is experiencing a slight...
I've been reading these Epstein emails and stuff, and it's highly disturbing. You wanted evidence, you wanted proof on Trump's involvement. There it is, clear as day. It is highly disturbing, and it's kind of gross at the same time. It's just nasty. And at this point, anyone standing by Trump, ew, is all I can say. I don't know what else to say. I think ew pretty much says it. But I'm curious what senators and what people in the House are going to do now, because if you wanted a smoking gun, you got it. You got it. And I'm just curious how many people are going to stand behind him now. Because if you do, ew. I literally don't know what else to say.
The emails released this morning regarding Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump are truly a bombshell, and in a lot of ways a smoking gun that any prosecutor would love to have. And people aren't talking about the biggest thing here. One of the emails from 2011, this is way before Donald Trump ever even announced his candidacy for president, show Epstein talking to Maxwell saying that essentially Trump spent hours with the victim at one of Epstein's houses. But that's not all. A later email from 2019 completely discredits what Donald Trump was saying publicly. Trump publicly was saying that he kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club because Epstein was stealing girls or employees from Trump. But that's not actually fully true. A new email from 2019 from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff shows that Trump knew, according to Jeffrey Epstein, what Ghislaine Maxwell was doing with the young girls. And that's likely why he kicked Epstein out of his club. When I tell you that this is a dream for any prosecutor concerning circumstantial evidence, now it doesn't prove that Donald Trump did anything wrong with the girls, but it does prove that he was much closer in connection with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell than we knew. It also shows that Trump may be lying about why he kicked Epstein out of his club. Proximity is important, and that's why a full investigation is warranted. We need to keep digging up the more files from the Justice Department. Spread the word. Follow along for more.
It is full panic mode right now in the Trump administration and for Trump himself, who these documents, these emails that are coming out are very, very damning, in which Jeffrey Epstein himself pretty much says here that Donald Trump knew what was going on. But let's go ahead and kind of just break down everything here, because there is a lot, and Donald Trump right now has taken to Truth Social saying that the whole thing is a hoax. If you don't know, the House Oversight Committee Democrats released 3 emails. These emails come from Epstein, and they specifically mention Trump. Remember how they originally said, meaning that the Trump administration, that There was nothing mentioned with Trump in it? Nope, turns out that's not true. There are. He's mentioned in these. And as this was happening here, the GOP-led committee dumped a much larger batch of information, and right now reporters are still going through the information even at this hour. So let's talk about the first 3 emails, and I apologize if this video is going to be long. I'm finally diving into this. The first one comes from Epstein back in 2011, in which he says that Trump is the dog that has not barked. This is a phrase that you're pretty much used for someone who basically is like mysteriously quiet. And in that email, Epstein goes on to say that a woman, in which this says victim here, they're not releasing who that person is, had spent hours with.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.